Well, hello, our fellow friends, our fellow neighbors, and our fellow shining stars. Our next trolley stop is here, and our next trolley stop is now. Welcome back to another all new episode of PR from the Heart's Children's Book Spotlight Series. To be precise, we have reached episode number 219. That is the 219th trolley stop here at PR from the Heart, here at the Children's Book Spotlight Series, as we have officially entered our back to school season. That is one of our favorite times of the year. My name is John Masiulionis, the manager of PR from the Heart and the host of the Children's Book Spotlight Series, joined as always each and every episode, each and every trolley stop by my faithful furry friend and forever companion. He reminds me, John, first off, I am Little Forrest. Not only am I your co-host in this journey called life, but I am also your co-host on the Children's Book Spotlight Series. So get things straight. So Little Forrest is enjoying a nice collagen treat. We hope that you are enjoying the start of your August, wherever you are and wherever you may be. And as I mentioned, we are heading into the back to school season. It's hard to believe that the summer is nearly complete. But there are many things to be able to take the time to celebrate. Officially, PR from the Heart just celebrated its official 10-year anniversary celebration several days ago. We're continuing to celebrate that over the course of the coming weeks and the coming months ahead. And we could really use some more celebratory energy right now, don't you think? Especially over the course of what's been happening, not only here in the United States, but around the world over the last several weeks and the last several months. The world needs a pick-me-up. The world needs more joy and more love now more than ever before. And it's interesting because, a lot of times as adults, we can tend to overthink things. We feel that we need to even reinvent the wheel, so to speak. Like, how can I create more joy in my life, right? How can I create more love in my life? It's one of those old age long story questions, right? Like, why is the sky blue? Why is the grass green? How can I bring more love and joy into my life? That's a good question. And I feel we have the answer today here on this trolley stop of the Children's Book Spotlight Series, or at least a very important answer. Leave it to a brand new children's book to help all of us see the way, not only us as adults, as parents and caregivers and custodians of our children, but to also teach our children about the importance of joy and love, how to cultivate more of that into their own life, and how they can do their part to be a ray of light and bring more joy and love and hope and kindness into the lives of their fellow friends and neighbors. We encourage all of you, our listeners and viewers, our friends and neighbors, and of course, our fellow shining stars. You can head on over to Amazon.com if that is your preferred online vehicle of your choosing, and you can leave a 5-star review for Rumi, Poet of Joy and Love. That is now available courtesy of our friends and neighbors at NorthSouth Books. One of the many ways that you can pledge your support for Rashin, who is joining us as our featured guest here on episode number 219 of the Children's Book Spotlight Series. One of the many ways you can pledge your support for her is by leaving a 5-star review on Amazon. That lets her know that she's doing wonderful and much needed work for children, parents, families, educators, and for those who love great children's books. If you head on over to your favorite local library, your favorite children's or independent bookstore, remember, they are the pillars of our community. If they do not stock their copies of Rumi, Poet of Joy and Love, make that kind recommendation. Let them know that you heard about it right here on episode number 219 of the Children's Book Spotlight Series. And a special thanks, by the way, special shout out to our friends and neighbors at the ALA, at the American Library Association. We had the opportunity to be at ALA in San Diego several weeks ago, and you're starting on this particular trolley stop, and over some of the coming trolley stops ahead, you will be seeing some of the shining stars that were front and center at ALA in San Diego. The trolley travels across the country from San Diego to our nation's capital in Washington, D.C., Joining us is our featured guest here on episode number 219 of the Children's Book Spotlight Series to kick off our back to school season is award-winning children's book illustrator and author Rashin Kheiriyeh. I always like to make sure that I am pronouncing everyone's names correctly, and I got the phonetics. We got everything down. We saw each other in San Diego, and now it's finally great to be able to connect in this fashion. Thank you for spending some of your time with us here and helping us to kick off our back to school season of the Children's Book Spotlight series. Rashin, how are things with you today?
Hi, John. Thank you so much. You did wonderful in pronouncing my name. That was perfect. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited and happy to be in Children's Book Spotlight podcast. And I'm looking forward to have a conversation with you about my new book, Rumi, Poet of Joy and Love.
We've got so much to talk about. We always like to take care of the housekeeping first things first. If this message, these messages of joy and love, if they're inspiring, if you say, John, Rashin, you know what? This is something that's been on my to-do list for a long period of time. I want to bring more joy and love into my life. If you're struggling to bring joy and love into your life and you simply want to do your part to not only help yourself, but to help some of your fellow neighbors in need. If you know someone who is struggling when it comes to cultivating joy and love in their life, if anything, you just want to put out the good word in the process. And if you want people to learn about Rumi as well, too, because we're going to be learning everything there is to know about Rumi and then some, one of the many ways that you can also pledge your support for Rashin, as well as for us here at the Children's Book Spotlight series, subscribe to our official YouTube channel and share this very special trolley stop that you are now enjoying. That is episode number 219 of the Children's Book Spotlight series. By subscribing to our official YouTube channel, you can join the more than 17,000 members of the PR from the Heart family that are our loyal subscribers to our official YouTube channel. Rashin, we always love to be able to start off every Children's Book Spotlight series by talking about origin stories. And one of the great things that I love about children's books, there's always two origin stories. There's the origin story of the author, and then there's the origin story of the book that we're focusing and spotlighting and highlighting on the Children's Book Spotlight series. But I really love this Children's Book Spotlight series episode because technically there's three origin stories. There's your origin story, there's Rumi's origin story, and then there's the origin story of your book. We'll talk about all three origin stories, beginning with your story, because your journey has literally taken you far and wide. You obviously, for those who are loving your accent, they might be saying, I wonder where Rashin is from. She's in Washington, D.C., but I'm not sure how long she's been in Washington, D.C. You've had a fascinating journey. And where I want to start off is, take us back to that moment in time. Was it a series of events and experiences? When did you know that you had this gift of artistry and writing and helping people to connect with their heart and open their hearts? When did it really all begin for you? And not only when did it begin for you, but where did it begin for you?
Well, to tell you a little bit about my background, I was born in Iran. And I grew up there. I studied art in Iran, and everything. I had a great passion to be an artist when I was very little. My mom was a painter, and she really helped me and encouraged me when she saw some I don't know, talent in me, and she saw that I am very enthusiastic about painting all the time, doodling. I was a big doodler. Any chance I got, I was doodling in some papers here and there. So my parents really encouraged me, especially my mom. And so I went to art school in Iran. That was the first female art school in Tehran called Azadegan. So I went there, I studied graphic design, and my career started from there as an illustrator for children's magazines, and then children's books comes along.
I love that. And the fact that your mom was able to recognize your gifts that early on. I'm curious, how did that make you feel? Because, one of the things that I've seen over the 10 years that I've been doing PR publicity work for children's authors and connecting with kids in schools and libraries and bookstores, I've met a lot of children that have skills and gifts and talents, but either their parents can't see those in them, or even their parents don't have the time for their own kids. So could you share with us, knowing the fact that, wow, my mom sees this in me, How did that make you feel?
Well, now I feel very lucky, and back then I was very happy that my mom supporting me doing things. She taught me how to draw the profile, cats and dogs, and these simple drawings. But in the way, that was amazing that she was supporting me. And my childhood in Iran, it started with a big chaos because I was born in 1979, right after the Islamic Revolution, and the beginning of a 8-year long war between Iran and Iraq. And the city, my hometown, the city I was born, called Khorramshahr, it was a southern city right in the border between Iran and Iraq, and that was the first place that Iraqi troops struck, and we literally lost our home. Our house was like destroyed by bomb, and so we fled that city, and we went to the northern part of Iran, which was a different accent, different culture, different people. So in the early age, I experienced like being a refugee in our country. And so art was the only thing that was accessible in my mom's life to make me busy with that, and I hopefully I enjoyed it. My mom, she was very talented in art, but she didn't get a chance to go to art school. It wasn't popular back then, so she studied nursing, and she was a midwife. But she always wanted me to be an artist when I grew up, and so that was the thing. So I enjoyed it a lot. And yeah.
I really appreciate your vulnerability. I'm sorry to hear that you experienced what you experienced growing up. One of the things that it sounds like, it seems like, and it feels like is that, in life, we always move through some challenges.
Mhm.
And sometimes it can even go beyond that. It can be a challenge, it can be a difficulty, but it can be everything ranging from challenges, difficulties, obstacles, problems, stressors, troubles, worries, you name it. But the good thing is that when we stay the course, this may sound cliche in many respects, but when we never give up, we can get through to the other side of that. Now, you obviously mentioned the support of your mom, which is great. Specifically, you mentioned one of the challenges you experienced growing up, and obviously being in a war-torn country. Specifically, and whether it be with that challenge or other challenges that you experienced, what were some of the things that have helped you throughout your life, throughout not only your career, but also your life? What were some of the things that have helped you to get through some of your biggest challenges that you've experienced along your path?
Well, it wasn't easy to be like a female artist working in the society in Iran. It was challenges. Always there are differences between a male artist and female artists. Even in the payment are big difference. So it was challenging. But I always look back and look at my parents and see how they were um, resilient. Um, I always admire them how they manage their life after losing everything, and they had to start everything from the beginning, from a square one, and how they manage that. By looking at that, I gain a strength to over any challenges or difficulties.
And it's just incredible to see how far that you've come, because learning more about your career when you were at ALA and then preparing for our interview, the fact that you have more than 90 children's books to your credit. So that's just mind-boggling and fascinating on many different levels. But we're always big about connecting with our inner child here on the Children's Book Spotlight series. If, let's say, you could have that conversation, I feel that you can, with, let's say, little Rashin growing up, right? And she's like, okay, like, I have this gift of being an artist. Now you're on the other side. You have 90 children's books to your credit. You're crisscrossing the country. We're celebrating the release of Rumi, Poet of Joy and Love. What is it that you would want to share to your inner child? Maybe something you've wanted to share to your inner child, like, I'm so glad you didn't give up, or maybe something a little bit beyond the scope of that. But what would that sound like? What would that feel like?
Well, I definitely, yeah, I like the impression you said. Yeah, I'm glad that you didn't give up. And despite all the tragedy and horrible things happened back then. I feel I'm very lucky that my parents created a safe place for me, so I could grow up, and I had a happy childhood despite all those war thing, bad experiences. But I had very happy childhood, and I don't know. I would say to her that yeah, keep going. And every child I meet during their school visits, I'm telling them, do you like to paint? Do you like drawing? And they say, yay. I say, yeah, keep doing that, because most of the children, most of them are good in art, but some of them keep practicing that, the other not. So they, after a while, they lose those talents. So I'm telling them that, yeah, being an author and illustrator is amazing. That's a wonderful job. It's the best job ever in the world. And I just advise them that keep doing that. Try to do art. Just it's the best thing in the world. It brings peace in every corner, and you can make a lot of friends through that.
I can only imagine the impact that you're making on a lot of little girls and young women who, especially like now, the good thing is that there's more opportunities, that a lot of the doors that were closed to young women and to older women alike were closed not that long ago. And now in many respects, like, you are a trailblazer. So I can imagine you going into schools and there's, young women that are excited, like, I can do this. I can be an artist. I can be an author. I can bring more joy and more love into the lives of people. And that, in the words of one of our favorite neighbors, Mr. Rogers, is such a good feeling. We hope that you are enjoying episode number 219 of the Children's Book Spotlight series. We are fully enjoying our time with award-winning children's book illustrator, artist, and children's book author, Rashin Kheiriyeh. We're about ready to dive into the pages of her brand new children's book, Rumi, Poet of Joy and Love, courtesy of our friends and neighbors at NorthSouth Books. We encourage all of you, our listeners and viewers, our friends and neighbors, and of course, our fellow shining stars, to head on over to Amazon.com if that's your preferred online vehicle of your choosing, and to purchase and enjoy your copy of Rumi, Poet of Joy and Love, or head on over to your favorite local library, your favorite children's or independent bookstore, and purchase your copy there. If you head on over to Amazon.com and that's your preferred online vehicle of your choosing, one of the many ways that you can pledge your support for Rashin is by leaving a 5-star review. That simply lets her know that she's doing wonderful and much needed work for children, parents, families, educators, and for those who love great children's books. If you head on over to your favorite local library, your favorite children's or independent bookstore, and they do not stock their copies of Rumi, Poet of Joy and Love, make that kind recommendation. Let them know that you heard about it right here on the Children's Book Spotlight series. And for all educators, teachers, principals, librarians, as you are doing your part to facilitate your plans for the 2024-2025 school year, if you want to facilitate your own author school visit with Rashin, you can head on over to her official website, which we've included in the description below. Because again, Rumi's life, just even the themes of joy and love, which we're going to be talking more about, they're really needed, especially in classrooms. We've seen so much violence in classrooms, whether it be ranging from bullying to school shootings. And just imagine your classroom having more love and joy. Like, let's seriously make this the best school year that our kids have ever had in the history of school years. Now, it's been over 800 years. We got to go way back. Like right now, we're in 2024. We got to go back 800 years to talk about the origin story of Rumi. Now, I was introduced to Rumi, gosh, I'd probably say a little over 10 years ago. One of my favorite authors, he was a beloved spiritual teacher, New York Times bestselling author, Dr. Wayne Dyer. And he would always talk about Rumi. I'm like, who is this Rumi person? He's like, sounds amazing. And then like learning more about Rumi's life and reading some of Rumi's work, I'm like, there's something to this, right? But obviously, there are many people that have maybe only heard of Rumi that's like, okay, I've heard the name before, but is he a poet? Is he a plumber? Like, who is this Rumi guy, right? So I think it's important because obviously your book talks about this. But before we go in depth and talk a little bit more about your story, let's talk a little bit about Rumi's life and really where then the seeds were planted for you. Because again, I'm sure you're approached with many different projects, right? And there's this, and there's this, and there's this. You have to choose. You have to be discerning what you want to illustrate, what you want to write in the process. So after sharing a little bit more about Rumi's life, could you share with us that specific time frame where it's like, oh, wow, I think this book on Rumi's life should be put out into the world? When did that land up happening? Could you kind of sync us up with the timeline of that?
John, too, I would like to share a quote from Rumi that it resonates with the thing you mentioned about misbehavior in the schools and bullying and stuff. He says, be a friend. He says, should you wish to be in heaven forever, be a friend to everyone. So Rumi's words are really needed now more than ever. I really agree with you on that. So Rumi was born in Iran, like in 13th century, 800 years ago, and he grew up in Iran, and he moved to Turkey when he was young. Rest of his life he lived in Turkey, and he died in Turkey, and his tomb is in Turkey, and everyone visiting him every year, celebrating his life in Turkey. So he's a big and he's a famous poet, a scholar, and Sufi. He was a spiritual guy. He has a very inspiring life himself. His life dramatically changed after he met a guy named Shams, who was a Sufi guy. He was a Persian Sufi. After the meeting, Rumi's life has changed dramatically. Before that, Rumi was a teacher. He was a religious teacher, and he was very well known. He had so many students and followers listening to him, taking part in his classes. But after he met Shams, they had a conversation for days about God and who created this beautiful world and all these spiritual things, and Shams' opinion about God opened Rumi's mind, and he changed. He dramatically changed, and in between something happened. I don't want to spoil the story, but something happened, and these two friends had to be separated. So in those separation, Rumi became very depressed and began to write. So Rumi started writing after he lost his dear friend Shams. So he wrote his well-known book called Masnavi, and he wrote it in Farsi. That was his mother's tongue. So he wrote it in Farsi, and it was a poetry book, include in consisted no, and it consists 24,000 verses. Um, yeah, so it was a huge success for him, and everyone loved that book. It tells amazing stories. And one of the things that Rumi created was a kind of dance. It was a spiritual dance. It's called Sama. And so he became to realization that praying is not only the thing that you they taught you in religious books. You can dance by being connected to God. You can be happy. You can. That's why he talks about love and joy and friendship. So I really admire him, and I always thought that we need to share his amazing life with young readers.
And you're doing that especially through the release of this book. And there's so many realizations. Some people will use the term ahas, where it's like it's a matter of, again, as adults, especially as we move through life, we can feel very bitter, jaded, cynical, and even wonder, like, is love possible? Is joy possible? It's during our path, we can easily go outside of ourselves and think love is only found in a relationship with someone else, or joy only happens when I get the $1 million in my bank account. Those are important things, don't get me wrong, but Rumi had mentioned several things. One is that we can be close to God in an infinite number of ways, right? We don't necessarily have to be at a church at 10 a.m. on a Sunday to communicate with God. We can be out in nature. We can be by the ocean, especially if you live here in San Diego. You can just talk to God through prayer and meditation in your own home, your own apartment, wherever it is that you may reside. And another realization, as I'd alluded to, and as you had alluded to as well, is that love is in us and everywhere. So again, that's something that we can forget about, right? Many of us on our path, especially if maybe we've had some challenges with relationships, it's always an inside job. Like, love begins with us. And the more love that we cultivate within ourselves, the more love then that you can experience in relationships externally. One of the most, as we're beginning to dive into the pages of Rumi, Poet of Joy and Love, one of my favorite illustration spreads, I'm looking at it right here, and it's a beautiful, beautiful quote. It was an exchange with Rumi and his father. Learn generosity from the sun. It lights the world every day and asks for nothing in return. And that's very powerful, because in many respects, we live in a society of putting the me before the we, right? If I do this for you, then you need to do this for me. And that's kind of like transactional. So right off the bat, one of the things that I'm enjoying about your story, and what I feel the kids are going to connect with, is you really learn to know about unconditional love and unconditional giving and receiving. And again, especially too, because, I can only imagine some adults, and you probably run into some adults, where it's like, poetry, meh, right? Like, I'm not interested in poetry. You literally bring Rumi to life. And that's a big question that I wanted to ask, because, again, you have the opportunity to write and create and just work on so many different projects, knowing the fact that you were actually introducing kids to Rumi, and even adults that maybe didn't know who Rumi was or only heard of them. What does that mean to you, knowing the fact, the Iranian connection, following his work for some time? Like, in many respects, you're like a custodian keeping his memory and his legacy alive. What does that mean to you?
Well, that's pretty amazing. That's exactly what I feel, because after creating so many books, um, this is my favorite one. And I think it's like, I was born to create this book. And if I only have this book in my career, I'm happy. I'm done. I did what I what I needed to be done. And so I feel really good. Rumi is really um, inspiring, his own life and his poetry itself. Um, and all ages, there is no age limits to understand him. Some people think that only his poetry sufficient for adults, but children will can enjoy it. I remember when I was a child, my mom always read his poems to me, and I loved his stories, because Rumi has a sort of sense of humor in his stories that really connects with children. So when you are a child and you read his poetry, you can understand it. You enjoy the story, you understand it. But after a while, when you get older and you revisit those poems, now you understand it more. You understand it deeper. It's like in all ages, because Rumi used a lot of metaphors in his writing. When you are a child, you may don't get those metaphors very well, but when you are older, you can get those meaningful metaphors he used in his poetry. That's why he's he's good for all age groups, and you can learn from him.
I'm really glad that you touched upon that. And one other thing that's tied into that, that's similar yet stands out uniquely, you had mentioned about your own challenges in life. And one of the things that you really cultivated through the story, there's a specific passage that says, despite all his success, Rumi was not happy. Something was missing in his heart. And so you see, again, you can look 800 years later at his life and say, Rumi was this enlightened being, this silver Buddha on a golden cloud, and he had all of these great things happen, but you're really able to learn about all facets of the journey of Rumi, right? In life, there's the light and the dark. There is the polarity. There is the ups and the downs and the ebbs and the flows. And just again, being able to bring this story to life, again, like this is why, again, when I first saw your book, it was one of the things is that like I really connect with my inner child when I take the time to read a children's book. And like there's a part of me, again, I was fascinated. I'm like, I've never seen a children's book. Like I'm familiar with Rumi, I know his work, but being able to have it in the form of a children's book that's very simple, yet very descriptive, yet very vibrant. I'm curious to hear the feedback that you've seen. You've gone into classrooms, you were just at ALA in San Diego, so you've met a ton of librarians, ton of educators, a ton of parents. And no matter whatever a person's title is, if they're teacher, librarian, parent, we all go through that journey. And in many respects, we struggle with love and joy. At some point in time, those are like some of the highest vibrations that we can have, love and joy. But there's times where we feel depressed or anxious or stressed out, and we're not able to cultivate that high flying disc. We're not able to cultivate the love and the joy. What has been some of the feedback? You've taken this book across the country, from children ranging all the way to senior citizens. What has been the feedback that you have been receiving about this story specifically?
That's very interesting. John, before I start to write this book, I already illustrated other books by Rumi. Like I illustrated his famous children's book stories, and I read those to American schools here. And the thing I realized during these visits that Children don't know anything about Rumi and his poetry. They know Shakespeare very well, but not Rumi. So that was the moment that I thought I have to write a book about him. So introduce Rumi himself to children, and then by having that book, they will be encouraged to go and read his poetry. So that was the moment. So their feedback was really nice after they listening to his stories, but I was surprised at why they didn't know him before my reading my book. So 2 years ago, when me and my publisher, my editor, Herwig, in NorthSouth Books. 2 years ago, we had a discussion. We had a Zoom meeting. He lives in Zurich. So we had a Zoom meeting, and he came up with the idea of to honor 750 anniversary of Rumi's death, let's make a book about Rumi. And I really liked his idea because, as I mentioned, I had this idea in my mind that, yeah, we have to have a book about Rumi. So we came up with the idea, and I thought that we need to portray Rumi as a child, so kids can connect with him better, so they know that all the even great poets were a child one day. So Rumi was the same. So Rumi was a child. He has he has a great life, but something in his heart was missing. And what was that? That was the friendship and love. So then we continued the story with those challenges in his life, to give children more story to think about, more puzzles to solve.
I love that because it really helps kids to connect with Rumi on their level. Knowing the fact that Rumi was once a child, he wasn't this, elder gentleman. I mean, eventually he was, but he started off being a child. And I also love in the story, one of my favorite parts of the book is when you really weave in the fact that Rumi was a storyteller. So there's a passage in the book that says, children gathered around Rumi to listen to his story. Sit, be still, and listen. Rumi said, the children sat quietly and listened carefully. So he had this way with children, right? He wasn't just this mystic and poet and this spiritual being. Like, he had this connection with kids, and you're able to literally bring that to life. So that's actually one of my favorite illustration spreads, where you see all of the kids and they're mesmerized being in Rumi's presence. That was just super cool. I'm really glad that you were able to integrate that into the story. We are beginning to wind down our time with our featured guest here on episode number 219 of the Children's Book Spotlight series, award-winning children's book illustrator, artist, and children's book author, Rashin Kheiriyeh. We encourage, again, all of you, our listeners and viewers, our friends and neighbors, and of course, our fellow shining stars, to head on over to Rashin's official website. We've included that in the description below, by also heading on over to Amazon.com if that's your preferred online vehicle of your choosing. And also head on over to your favorite local library, your favorite children's or independent bookstore, where you can enjoy your copy of Rashin's brand new children's book, Rumi, Poet of Joy and Love. It is now available, courtesy of our friends in NorthSouth Books. One of the many ways that you can pledge your support for Rashin is by leaving a 5-star review on Amazon. Again, if that's your preferred online vehicle of your choosing, that lets you know that she's doing wonderful and much needed work for children, parents, families, educators, and for those who love great children's books. If you head on over to your favorite local library, your favorite children's or independent bookstore, and they do not stock their copies of Rumi, Poet of Joy and Love, make that kind recommendation. Let them know that you heard about it right here on the Children's Book Spotlight series as part of the kickoff of our back to school season here of the program. And of course, for all educators, teachers, principals, librarians, superintendents, as you are doing your part to cultivate joy and love into your classrooms for this forthcoming school year for 2024-2025. If you want to schedule your author school visit with Rashin for the upcoming school year, head on over to her official website. We've included that once again in the description below. One of the things that we'd love to be able to also do here on the Children's Book Spotlight series, Rashin, is to provide some useful information. I feel all of what we've shared has been useful thus far, but specifically useful information for parents, for caregivers, for grandparents, for educators, in the forms of tips and tools and strategies, things that we can immediately implement after watching a Children's Book Spotlight series episode and implement it into our lives, as well as the lives of our children, the lives of our students. And we've seen a lot of division in the world. I mean, just, recently there was an attempted presidential assassination of former President Trump, and you see a lot of divides. And you could look at it as Democrat and Republican, but it goes beyond that. There's division all over the world, right? Sometimes you can even have division where if a husband and a wife can't get on the same page for what to make for dinner that night, that's kind of division, maybe not an attempted presidential assassination, but Rumi, one of Rumi's big things that he helped us to remember is that strength comes through unity, not division. And this is something I feel that we don't necessarily have to overcomplicate. We don't have to be in our head about this. But specifically on the thread of unity, what are some of the things that we can do as parents, as caregivers, as custodians of our children? What are some of the things that we can do to teach our children to be a uniter and not a divider?
Well, I really recommend them to go and read Rumi's tales, Rumi's stories, because in each of them, the main thing his stories goes around is friendship. I have illustrated one of his poems called Two Parrots, and it's a story of a parrot and a merchant. And the whole thing and the whole message of his story is about friendship and reunion and being united. It's I think he's a very good source to encourage kids to make friendship with others, and also I wanted to mention something. By this kind of books that talks about different cultures, you can open a conversation during the classrooms, so people from different cultures can share similar experiences, and they may have great people or great quotes from different sources that helps to understand and make them close together. I mean, we have to teach our children that they have to put others besides them. No, can you cut this part?
Oh no, this is when you're touching upon several things that are really key, specifically tying into unity and strength. One of the things is that you mentioned earlier in the conversation about, should you wish to be in heaven forever, be a friend to everyone. And in many respects, it all goes back down to that. Like when you take the time, even if it's just being kind, even if necessarily you're having difficulty being friends with someone, or you can say, well, I don't know if I can see myself being a friend with that particular person. It's so important to teach our kids about kindness, because that's really where it begins. If you can just envision a world that is more kindness, then there's more love, then there's more unity. So I really love how everything that you shared really blends together perfectly. One of the beautiful things that Rumi is reminding us, that you're reminding us, is that life is a teacher. We learn every day. Sometimes people might think, okay, you go to grammar school, you go to high school, you go to college, maybe you have some form of grad school, like if you're training to be a doctor or something like that. But throughout life, we learn every day. So life in many respects is a school. Earth is a school. I'm always curious when I ask this question of a guest in the program, because undoubtedly you learned a lot just through the course of researching Rumi's life, bringing this book to life, now sharing it with the world. What has Rumi and what has this book, Rumi, Poet of Joy and Love, what has this taught you about yourself, and what has it taught you about life?
Well, that's a great question. When I was writing this biography of Rumi, I had to do a lot of researches, and I found interesting things. We always talking about, yeah, Rumi is very inspiring, and we have to follow him. But what inspired Rumi in the beginning? And I find out that when he was young, he met a great Persian poet called Attar, and he gave him his book, his poetry. Um, the title was The Conference of the Birds. And in that book, Rumi find out the story of hundreds of birds searching for Simorgh, which was a mythical bird similar to phoenix. So they're searching for that bird, and they had to fly a very difficult journey. But at the end, only 30 birds survived. And when they fly together, they realize that they are the giant bird. They are Simorgh. Because they united, they created that giant bird themselves. So these are very interesting that that very influenced on Rumi. When he got older, he used those sources and inspiration to write his own poetry based on that. And that's the big message of him in his in all his works about friendship and unity and this and that. And it affects on me too. And one of the things that I love about Rumi is that, as I mentioned earlier, he moved from Iran to Turkey because of the war and to find a safe place to live. It's very resonated with my personal life because that exactly happened to me. I fled my hometown, and now that I'm far from my country, I feel that one of his famous verse that is talking about separation. Now I really feel the same thing. If you don't mind, I read it in Farsi and then I will read it in English. He says, بشنو از نی چون حکایت می کند، از جدایی ها شکایت می کند. هر کسی کو دور ماند از اصل خیش، باز جوید روزگار وصل خیش. He says, listen to the reed, like flute. It's a musical instrument. Listen to the reed and the tale it tells, how it sings of separation. Whoever is separated from their origin, desire to return to the time of union. So it really resonates with me, and I think it's very close to my personal journey.
It's so fascinating how there's that parallel, right? Where when you took the time to really look at the 30,000 feet in the air big picture, it's like you see the similarities between Rumi's life and your life. And this also helps us to realize that, how does the expression go? You don't know what someone is going through unless you walk a mile in their shoes. Mm-hmm. Well, in many respects, you've walked several miles similar to Rumi in the process. And this is just, one of the things, especially like during the back to school season, I've spoken with a lot of educators and parents, and it's just like, ultimately, this is one of the reasons why your book needs to be out in the world, because just on the thread of love and joy, Like if all we did in school was teach kids love and joy, and it would be important to teach them other things as well, like teach them about finances, for example, right? And, you teach them the science and the math and all those other things and history, but to teach them about love and joy, because then we're creating the next generation that's not going to be on the anxiety medications or to be on the therapist's couches, right? Because they'll be able to, they'll have more calmer nervous systems and be able to navigate through life that much easier and have greater self-acceptance and then acceptance of other people as well too. There's always two ways that we close out every children's book spotlight series. We're huge fans and fellow neighbors of our fellow neighbor, the beloved Fred Rogers. Mr. Rogers was the host of the long-running popular children's program here in America, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. It aired for many decades, and in many respects, he was similar to Rumi, where he was about teaching kids love and joy and kindness. And in many respects, when he did his program, which aired on PBS, in many respects on the neighborhood, when he traveled across the country to college commencement speeches, he even spoke in front of the American Library Association in the early 90s. And he always kept the time, Rashin, whether it be 15 seconds, 30 seconds, or a full minute. He encouraged us to remember those who loved us into being. And I always get goosebumps talking about that, because that was his way of saying, remember those people who came onto your path that reminded you of the love and the joy that are within you, that reminded us about the importance of expressing love and joy to our fellow neighbors. I know that you had mentioned your mother. She was undoubtedly someone who helped love you into being. Who are some of the other people that you would like to publicly recognize here on episode number 219 of the Children's Book Spotlight series who have helped love you, Rashin Kheiriyeh, into being?
For sure. I didn't mention my father. He wasn't in art himself. He was very good in mathematics. He was a teacher in math. But he always bought me. He used to buy me art supplies like watercolor, notebooks, and this and that. So he always supported me. So that's the other one that taught me live in a loving home. That's that. Now my husband is wonderful. When I was very homesick here in the US, his company make me very calm and give me comfort. And so he was like piece of home, because he's an Iranian too. He's an Iranian artist. So he's the other one I would like to mention. And yeah, I had wonderful teachers in my elementary school and in my high school. Yeah, I would love to mention those two.
I love that. And the support, like when I saw, because, different times you go to different book fairs and festivals, and in this case, ALA, and the people, like, I remember like waiting in line to meet you, and everyone I was talking, they were so excited. Now they were excited to be in San Diego, but like I was hearing just a lot of like, I'm excited to meet Rashin. I'm excited to read her book. And it's just like, that felt good, because I was around a lot of people. You were around a lot of people, right? And, you can imagine with, a lot of people trying to get in the same place, there can be a lot of combustible energy. So it's just really cool. And like, this is also why like Rumi's got very good energy. Like I'm very energy sensitive on my end of things. So anytime I can be around more love and joy, or more authors who write about love and joy, it's kind of being on that greater wavelength, which is awesome. We're also very big on the Disney magic here at the Children's Book Spotlighters. And one of the things about Disney is the Disney movies, the animated classics, they remind us that we have the ability to bring to form and shape our dreams, our desires, our goals, our ambitions, we have the ability to fulfill our wishes. And we have the ability to help bring form and shape the dreams, the desires, the goals, the ambitions. We can help our fellow neighbors that come onto our path, family, friends, colleagues, clients, whomever, children, educators. We can help to bring to form and shape their dreams, desires, goals, ambitions. We can help them fulfill their wishes. So we go back to the year 1992. We're about the same age. We remember the late comedian Robin Williams. We remember how he voiced the beloved Genie of the Lamp in the 1992 Disney animated classic Aladdin. And we have a little segment that we like to call Three Wishes. So we go from talking about Rumi to a genie lamp. We've had this literally since day one here at PR from the Heart, and definitely since day one of the children's book Spotlight series. You have helped many, you've brought so much joy and love and peace into the lives of children, parents, families, educators for years, not only in Iran, here in the US, but around the world. So now it's your time to receive, Rashin. So you are being given three wishes. Now, I think the only automatic disqualifiers, you can't make someone fall in love with you, and you can't ask for more wishes. But anything besides that is fair game. Now, these wishes, they can be for yourself. They can be for the children of the world. They can be for our planet. What are your three wishes? What would they be?
I really wish happiness for people who are struggling with wars these days, in Middle East and everywhere. I wish happiness for all people, and I wish to have a cat.
Oh,
and third one, I wish. The problem is that my husband has allergic to cats. That's why I don't have one. So, but I wish to have a cat. And third wish, I wish to have a lot of ice creams.
those are great wishes. Those are really good wishes. And it's always been said that when a wish comes from one's heart, it has a greater chance of coming to fruition. One of the fastest growing endorsements in the world of children's literature. It's similar to, if you remember back in the 80s and 90s, there was a popular movie critic duo here in the United States, Siskel and Ebert. When they loved a movie, they gave it 2 thumbs up, right? Well, of course, we have little Forrest with us here, as always, at the Children's Book Spotlight series. Now he's taken a little bit of a nap on his innings. He's preserving his energy, but he's fully with us in presence and in spirit. One of the fastest growing endorsements in the world of children's literature is when little Forrest gives 2 paws up. He is proudly giving 2 paws up for Rumi, poet of joy and love. So again, I'll be taking the time to read. We haven't had the chance to read the book together, but that's on my to-do list. We've got like a stack of books, and he's been reminding me, John, the summer's almost over with. We got to take the time to read a little bit more. So duly noted, little Forrest. But again, when little Forrest gives 2 paws up for a children's book, you know that it is a proud endorsement even further from us here at PR from the Heart. Raise your hand if you have had fun. On episode number 219 of the Children's Book Spotlight series, we see hands from me. We see paws up from little Forrest. Rashin is beaming, so that means that she's having a smile and her hands up as well, too. We've had a lot of fun here on episode number 219 of the Children's Book Spotlight series. When we hear the trolley, that means that it is time to go. But most importantly, fear not, there are many more magical trolley stops to come on the Children's Book Spotlight series. If you have enjoyed this trolley stop, talking about the life, the spirit of Rumi, he's still with us in many respects, even though, he was around 800 years ago or so, right? And we're celebrating the 700th anniversary of his transition and his passing. He's still with us in spirit. So if this message has lifted your spirits, if it has lifted your spirits, and if you say, you know what, I want to do my part to spread more joy and love into the world to those who are struggling, to those who need it, if you want to continue to do your part to pledge your support for Rashin and us here at the Children's Book Spotlight series, all in one, all together, subscribe to PR from the Heart's official YouTube channel, Join the more than 17,000 members of the PR from the Heart family that are our loyal subscribers via our YouTube channel, and share this very special trolley stop that you have just enjoyed, that you have been enjoying. That has been episode number 219 of the Children's Book Spotlight series. But as I mentioned, there are many more magical trolley stops to come. We are fully in the midst of our back to school season, and then we officially head into the 6-year anniversary celebration of the Children's Book Spotlight series. We are so privileged and honored to be one of the longest running, most successful children's book podcasts in the kidlit community in the world of children's literature, interviewing some of the top children's authors and illustrators in the world of children's literature, ranging from published authors all the way to self-published authors. If you are a children's author, or if you are a middle grade author and would love to share your inspiring story in a forthcoming edition of the Children's Book Spotlight series, and to talk about the release of your new book, just as Rashin did here on episode number 219 of the program, head on over to our official website, prfromtheheart.com, or connect with us via any of our social media platforms that you now see on screen. Instagram, Facebook, and X, all at PR from the Heart. We want to give tips of the cap to one of our favorite neighbors. He's always with us in spirit, and he's also with us in a physical presence each and every month. You remember him and you love him as the beloved Mr. McFeely on the popular long-running children's television program, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. David Newell joins us each and every month. We know him and we love him as David Newell. He joins us each and every month for the sister program of the Children's Book Spotlight series, the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast. David and I, each and every month, as a little tip of the cap to his character, to the delivery man on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, to Mr. McFeely, we deliver heartfelt reviews from the newest children's books that are available in the world of children's literature, from the shining stars in the kidlit community. So if you are a children's author and would love for David and I to deliver a heartfelt review of your brand new children's book on a forthcoming edition of the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast, you know where to connect with us via our official website and our social media platforms, all at PR from the Heart. And as we're celebrating our 10-year anniversary, we look back to see how far that we've come. We have, again, been privileged and honored and blessed to be of service to some of the top children's authors and illustrators in the world of children's literature. John Parra, Catherine Roy, the beloved Sharon Lois and Bram, Skinnamarink-a-dinky-ding, Skinnamarink-a-doo, and that is not lost on us at all in any way, shape, or form. We have helped countless children's authors over the past decade to help their dreams come true. And of course, as now we head into the back to school season, we're going to be heading into the holiday season in 2025. Will be just around the corner sooner than we know it. So if you are a children's author and are looking for dedicated PR publicity support to create your own book media tour in a city of your choosing, or a national book media tour, head on over to our official website, prfromtheheart.com, schedule your courtesy connection call, and let us see how we can be of service to you. One final time, we encourage all of you, again, our listeners and viewers, our friends and neighbors, and of course, our fellow shining stars, to head on over to Rashin's official website, which we've included in the description below. Head on over to Amazon.com if that's your preferred online vehicle of your choosing. You can purchase and enjoy your copy of Rumi, Poet of Joy and Love. It is now available courtesy of our friends and neighbors at NorthSouth Books. You can also, of course, head on over to your favorite local library, your favorite children's or independent bookstore. If they do not stock their copy of Rumi, Poet of Joy and Love, make that kind recommendation. That's the little tip of the cap analogy. Let them know that you heard about it right here on episode number 219 of the Children's Book Spotlight series. And also, again, for all educators, teachers, principals, librarians, superintendents, you're doing your part to be able to make this the best, not only back to school season for your students, but the best school year ever. Should you wish to connect with Rashin to schedule your own author school visit for the 2024-2025 school year, head on over to her official website, which we've included in the description below. We've also included Rashin's social media platforms on Instagram. So stay connected. Keep the conversation going post Children's Book Spotlight series. Let's talk more about Rumi. Let's talk more about joy. Let's talk more about love. Let's use social media for the higher and greater good instead of what many people can tend to use social media for in the process. But again, when we hear the trolley, that means that it is time to go. We want to thank you for your continued support of PR from the Heart. for your continued support of the Children's Book Spotlight series, for your continued support of children's authors and illustrators, such as Rashin, who are doing wonderful and much needed work for children, parents, families, educators, and for those who love great children's books, for local libraries and children's and independent bookstores, truly what we refer to as the pillars of our community. But above all else, we want to thank you for helping us to walk home the children of the world. One final time, we felt his presence, we felt his spirit. In addition to Rumi, we have felt the presence and the spirit of our beloved friend and neighbor, Mr. Rogers. And in many respects, simply through his own natural weight, did you know that Mr. Rogers weighed 143 pounds during his entire natural adult life? Interestingly enough, 1 letter in I, 4 letters in love, 3 letters in you. In many respects, he reminded us, and he still does from above, he reminds us of our inherent worth, of our inherent value, of our skills, our gifts, and our talents. And as little Forrest was kind enough to spend some quality time with us alongside Rashin, we were, as a little tip of the cap to Mr. Rogers, we share our favorite 3 numbers, which are 2, 4, 3. There's 2 letters in we, 4 letters in love, 3 letters in you. That is our reminder to you that we see you, that we like you, that we love you just the way that you are. We see your inherent worth. We see your value. We see your skills, your gifts, your talents, that you are perfect, you are whole, you are healthy, you are complete, that you are loved and special just the way that you are. Let's spread more love. Let's spread more joy, not only throughout the month of August, not only during the back to school season, not only during the holiday season, but for the rest of our lives. And remember, that love and that joy is found within you, and then you can beam it out into the world, just like this golden shining star right here. So for Rashin Kheiriyeh, for Little Forrest, for myself, John Masiulionis, thank you for helping us to kick off our back to school season here at the Children's Book Spotlight series. And thank you for helping us to walk home the children of the world, our fellow friends, our fellow neighbors, and our fellow shining stars. Goodbye for now.